Hey everybody, hunter, fisher, trapper, trader, guide, scout, and interpreter, and country cook Steve Hall here in Nashville, Tennessee, along with Pretty Miss Sheila behind the camera, running the camera for us today. Right here I have a Christmas present that I got from my mother-in-law down in Red Bay, Alabama this year. A all completely seasoned Lodge, nice big cast iron pot. I said I'm going to look for a recipe when I get back home to put on the cooking show just to put in this pot. You're not going to believe it. About the time I got home, I got an email from a guy from, let me see if I can get this right, Marksville, Louisiana. His name is Russell Moulord, and he sent me a recipe for catfish stew. But one of the ingredients that's on here was for roux. And I went out to Walmart, I couldn't find it. I went to Kroger's, I couldn't find it. I went to Food Lion, I couldn't find it. So I called him up, I said, how do you make this stuff? I'll make it myself. So it's one of the other recipes on our cooking channel, Cooking with Shotgun Red, how to make a Louisiana roux. And what they do in a lot of their cooking, gumbos, etouffee, all that stuff, they take flour and oil, or flour and grease, or flour and butter, and they simmer it real slow, not even a simmer, almost like a medium to low medium cook. They say it takes about 2 beers to make one. That's how long you got to stir this stuff. But we actually have one of those recipes on our cooking channel. If you just look up how to make a Louisiana roux at Cooking with Shotgun Red, you'll see, because it requires 2 tablespoons in this recipe to make catfish stew. And catfish is so readily available here in Tennessee, I thought we have got to make some of this stuff. But I didn't want to stand in here and cook on this counter for, it takes about an hour and a half to make this recipe. So I'm going to take this pot that Marge gave me for Christmas. I'm going to take this recipe that Russell sent to me, and we're going to go to the kitchen where I can just stir it and simmer it, take my time, and enjoy being in the kitchen at the same time. So let's take this pot in there and get started on catfish stew. Well, all right, Marge, here's this brand new Lodge cooker that you got me, this pot, and I'm going to whip up a recipe that was sent to me by Russell Moulord out of Louisiana. The recipe starts out with 3 sticks of butter. I like this guy already. Real butter, not margarine. That's a pity pat of poison. Don't use margarine because it's nasty stuff. In fact, if you look on the ingredients of margarine, what they use to make margarine, the same petroleum products, is the same petroleum products they use to make the plastic tub that it's in. So if you want to eat plastic, it's up to you. That works fine for me as well. So, but I would just assume that because you're watching our show that you're friends, and we just want you to eat the good stuff. 3 sticks of real butter. And here's what I've been waiting on. The roux. 2 tablespoons of roux. Now, if you don't know what roux is, go watch the How to Make Louisiana Roux on our channel. And I learned that for the first time from Russell, and it goes in so many different recipes out of Louisiana. Gumbo, etouffee, all that stuff. And this recipe required 2 tablespoons, or 2 heaping tablespoons of roux, and I didn't have any, and Walmart didn't have any, and nobody had any, so I made some. So there's one, and we'll get the second heaping one out too. In just in case a little bit run over the side, we'll just take that much for good luck. There it is. Hey, you got to make a roux down in Louisiana. You start out with some flour and some oil, and you cook it up, and that's how you start out your Cajun. I'm just learning how to speak Cajun, that's all. But as soon as me and Sheila get a little break, we're going to go down to Louisiana when crawfish are in season and go down there and maybe do a film on a crawfish boil, because I just love crawfish. I mean, if you haven't ate those little mud bugs, you just have not lived. So as this is heating up here, and I got my heat kind of set on medium high to kind of give it a little bit of a kickstart, but then I'm going to turn it down. And the recipe calls for that roux and the 3 sticks of butter, and then 1 can of original RO TELs. And that's what this is. I already took it out of the can and put it in here. Oh, it's starting to make a little bit of a noise. So I'm getting my new Lodge pot cooked up here. And by the way, Lodge used to make a lot of their frying pans that are made out of cast iron, and their pots and everything, and then you had to season them yourself. You had to put oil on them, bake them in the oven, all that. And they found out that people with their busy schedules would just soon that this pot show up already seasoned. So they pre-season them at the factory. They coat them with like oil and bake them in ovens, and then they do it again. And so it's already like your grandma handed it down to you. All right, just remember, I'm going to try to put the ingredients in the description below, but you can always pause it. 3 sticks of butter, 1 can of RO TELs, and that's that RO TELs original. You can use mild or you can use spicy if you want. 2 onions chopped up, 2 medium onions diced, and it calls for 2 peppers. Well, I'm actually going to put 1 red one in there and 1 green one in there for my 2 peppers, because I like color. And that should look pretty good in there. And we're going to stir this in, kind of get that going. Now we've got our onions and our peppers in there. Wow. I'll bet this catfish stew is going to be fantastic. And we got 1 8-ounce can of Hunt's tomato sauce. Now don't buy tomato paste, and don't buy tomato soup, but make sure it's tomato sauce. And I think it's 1 8-ounce can. I'm pretty sure that's what he said. Let me look in my little recipe that I got from him. Yep, 1 8-ounce can of tomato sauce, and that's what I put in there. 2 onions, 2 bell peppers chopped, seasoned with salt and pepper. I can do that. Give a little bit of salt, not too much, because you can always add it as you're going. But you know me and pepper. Boy, I like a little pepper in there. I won't go too drastic on this recipe, because it also calls for Cajun seasoning. And that's just to get some more of that Cajun flavor in there, as if the roux isn't enough already. We'll put that in there. And we're making catfish stew. Never heard of it, never tried it, but I can't wait. Boy, that's looking good, Russell. Now I'm going to give you guys an email, because Russell Moulord from down there in Louisiana sent me this recipe. I got to thinking, maybe there's some people out there that got some very unique recipes that are easy to make. You know, try not to send me something with 67,000 different ingredients. Now I'm going to turn this clear down to just below medium, because I just want it to simmer. Got my roux in there. That was pretty exciting to me. But let me see here. He says, season with salt and pepper, Cajun seasoning, and add all the ingredients to a pot and saute and stir often for 1 hour, and add a little water if you need to, like if it starts to thicken. And then we'll move to the next process in just a little bit. So here we go in this new pot that Marge got me from Christmas. This new recipe that Russell sent me from down there in Louisiana. All the ingredients are in there so far. And boy, it looks just fantastic. I'm going to pause the camera for a second, let this simmer, and I'm going to stir it for about an hour, and we'll be back with the rest of the recipe of catfish stew. All right, it's been about an hour, and notice how it's got a little bit of liquid on top, but look what's underneath. Man, I've been stirring this stuff pretty regular, and you want to do that because he says it'll stick to the bottom. But this Lodge cookware, this here pot is just done so well. I don't have anything cooking to the bottom, nothing burnt at all. And I got the setting clear down on about 2.5 to 3 on the burner. Because if you leave it alone, watch this, I'll just let it sit there for a minute. See, it's already starting to perk a little bit. And it's still simmering, so it's had like a real low boil. But, and then look at it go. And that's only set on about 2.5 to 3. And I'm going to turn it up just a little bit right now, because I'm going to add some more ingredients. Remember, we started out with our 3 sticks of butter in there, and then we put in 2 heaping teaspoons of our roux, which we made in another recipe. And I didn't even know what roux was until I got cooking into some of this Cajun stuff. And one other thing, even though you use roux and making it by cooking it for like 20 to 30 minutes real slow, if you use roux in any one of your recipes, simmer it, your current recipe, for at least 30 to 35, 40 minutes maybe, or whatever, 45 minutes, to make sure that that flour that you use to make the roux, that taste goes away. That's one kind of a tip. We got 2 full peppers in there. We got 2 onions in there. We got some Cajun seasoning and some salt and pepper to taste. 1 little 8-ounce can of tomato sauce. And now, after an hour of simmering, we're going to add a can of cream of mushroom soup. Please use Campbell's. It's just good quality stuff. You know, when you're taking this much time to make a recipe, don't buy what's on sale. Because I did that the other day, and I mentioned it in another recipe, and I bought some Kroger's cream of mushroom soup, and it was just nasty. 1 can of cream of mushroom soup and 1 can of cream of celery soup. Campbell's, both of them, obviously. Here's our can of cream of celery and our can of cream of mushroom. I cannot wait to try this, because this just sounds so fantastic. And Russell Moulord, who sent me this recipe, I got to give credit to his buddy, because he said a friend of his sent this recipe to him, and I forgot to ask him who it was, but he got it from a friend, and then he gave it to me. So this recipe is from a friend of a friend, and that may have happened in your household several times. Golly, look at this stuff. Now it says after adding these 2 ingredients, these 2 cans, that we're supposed to stir it and simmer it for another 30 minutes, I believe. Let me take a look at the recipe over here. Yep, 1 can of cream of celery soup, 1 can of cream of mushroom soup, and saute for an additional 30 minutes. And then we're going to add our catfish. So let me get this all stirred up. And the 3 sticks of butter, you got to kind of go along the edge to make sure you incorporate them into the dish. And we're going to serve all of this over rice. So, man, it's looking good, it's looking good. And I'm going to keep working on going along the edge to get the butter into the recipe. And you could possibly back the recipe down to 2 sticks of butter, but it does seem to be incorporating now, and still get away with that. But that's totally up to you. And boy, that just looks nice and creamy and good. So let's give it another 30 minutes of simmering, and then we're going to add the rest of our ingredients, because there's some other stuff to go along with the catfish as well. We'll see in just a second. Well, actually, we'll see in about 30 minutes, because I got some stirring to do here. All right, I've been stirring this constantly. It's been about 30 minutes now. And you'll notice that when it bubbles to the top, simmers to the top, and I still got it set down on about 3, because it's a little fuller pot now than it was before, but I still got it way down on 3, that the butter kind of comes to the top here. Now when you stir it in, it takes a little bit to incorporate that butter back in. So I'm going to make a call here, and I'm going to say if I make this recipe in the future, I would only use 2 sticks of butter. You can try it from the original recipe and continue to make it that way, and you can get it to go back into your sauce, but it takes a little stirring to get that butter back in there. So I think it might have just a hair too much for the recipe. Now that's just my opinion. It's a great recipe because I've been kind of testing it as I've been going along. It's really delicious. Now here's our next thing. We'll get this stirred back in there good. See, that's looking pretty good. And the more I stir it, it seems like the more it accepts the butter. So again, it's your call to do what you want to do. And I'm going to take a second right here and say, if you have a great recipe, something that's unique, something that's different. I mean, don't send me a recipe on how to make, macaroni and cheese, because that's pretty simple. But if you got something that's very unique, something different, you can email it to me at www.shotgunredcompany@yahoo.com. And in the subject line, just put recipe. That way, if it does kick it over to my spam folder, I'll look for all recipes. And here's the best part. If we use your recipe on our cooking channel, you'll be in the drawing for a 2017 Cadillac Coupe de Ville windshield wiper blade. So you don't want to miss out on that drawing, because you might have a bad blade if you do own a Cadillac Coupe de Ville. And we hope you have some unique recipes that you'll send to us. And there we are with our 30 more minutes with our cream of celery soup in there and our cream of mushroom soup. Now we're going to add a handful of these little green onions, and I got the tops and bottoms. Of course, I cut off the little hairy parts at the very bottom, the root there. And I'm going to put in a handful of them little rascals. Kind of stir that in. That's what it calls for in the recipe. Looking good, Russell, looking good. And now it calls for 4 pounds of catfish. And I gotta admit to something. It looks like a lot, but I only have 3 pounds here because I just simply did not buy enough at the store. Nothing could be truer through falser teeth. But let me gently fold this in. And he said to stir this easy once you get your catfish in as you cook it for another 20 minutes, because as it starts to cook and flake, the catfish will start to break apart. So it wouldn't hurt to have a few little extra flakes floating around for flavor, but we don't want to bust them all up. I got them in little 1/2 to 3/4 inch cubes. I just took catfish fillets from Kroger's, and I should have been jug fishing when I found out about this recipe, but it's a little chilly outside in Nashville right now. I guess I should go fishing anyway. I need to do something. And so here we go. We're going to simmer this for another 20 minutes, folding it over and gently just make sure it doesn't stick to the bottom. And I hope I mentioned it, but just in case I didn't, at the very first process, when we put all the peppers in and all that stuff, he said to add water as you need to. And well, I didn't need to. It had plenty of fluid in there, plenty of liquid stayed in there. Even though we simmered it for about an hour, we did not have to, at least on our stove, add water to it. So it was plenty thin, so to speak, or just looked really good, but it didn't need water. So anyway, now we got our catfish folded in there. Catfish stew. Can you believe it? And we're going to serve this over a bed of rice. That's even better yet. Them Cajuns, they like their rice. So, all right, let's go ahead and fold this in here, and we'll see in about 20 minutes once this starts to get cooking into the recipe and turn a little whiter and getting done, but we don't want to break it up, so we're going to turn it easy. See you in about 20. Bye-bye. And check this out. It's all done. I've been stirring it, and you know what? I may have been proven wrong because a lot of that butter disappeared into the recipe on this after I put in the 3 pounds of catfish, and it calls for 4 pounds. So go ahead and use the 4 pounds of catfish, and you can reduce the butter to 2 sticks instead of 3, or just leave it at 3. But we're going to take this off the stove and take it back into the counter, our little presentation counter in there, and plate it up and show you what we have. Catfish stew. See you in just a second. Man, I can't thank you enough, Marge, for buying me this pot. Russell, I can't thank you enough for sending me this recipe. Let's take a look and see what we got. Now that we brought it back from the stove and we let it rest here for about 5 minutes, let's check it out. Let's uncover this pot of heaven here. This is something you can do with your catfish, because down here in Tennessee, they're easy to catch. Man, I was peeling across the lake one day when I first moved here, and I came across some buoys. And they had a guy's name on them, and catfish were bobbing underneath, so I asked them back at the marina. I said, what in the world is that, like commercial fishing? They said, no, if you buy a regular fishing license in Tennessee, you can have up to 50 buoys. You can run limb lines, you can have trot lines. I thought, man, I'm from Minnesota, and I love fishing up there, but if you throw one jug out with one hook, the DNR would tear you to pieces. So let's go ahead and plate this up. And I started out with like 1/2 to 3/4 inch pieces of catfish, and I think you should use like 1 inch chunks so that when you stir it, even though it breaks in half, you'll still have just the right size pieces for your recipe. And I'm back on the fence again. I say go with 2 sticks of butter instead of 3, because I had to stir that a little bit to get the butter back into the dish, so it's pretty butter strong, as they say. A little more rice. Wonder how this would be with wild rice from Minnesota. Oh, goodness gracious. There I go with that Minnesota stuff again. All right, and let's go ahead and dish this up. And again, I only put 3 pounds of catfish in here because that's all I bought from the store. I thought I had 4 pounds, but I didn't. And let's take a look at our finished product here. Ta-da! And let me move this pot slightly out of the way. There we go. And I'm going to take liberty here and just give it a little bit of chives for color on top for presentation. And that's just about right. Look at here. Catfish stew. from Russell Moulord in Louisiana that sent me that recipe. And I don't like to smack online, but I've got to try this with some catfish in there, a little bit of rice, and tell you my opinion on this. Wow. One thing I did notice is the catfish is very soft. It's not firm like if you deep fried it or something like that, which is really kind of pleasant and something different. I got to take one more little bite here so I make sure that my opinion is correct. Wow. I love that. In fact, I would probably put in a little more Cajun seasoning for me, but you want it so the whole family will eat it. And I'll tell you, is this the most delicious catfish stew I've ever ate? If it ain't, it ought to be, because this stuff is really a great recipe. Try it. Like I said, the only modification I would make to it is drop it down to 2 sticks of butter instead of 3, but other than that, this is really, really incredible stuff. There's our subscribe button right there, so you can go ahead and subscribe to our channel. Click on that and you'll be the first to know if we got a new recipe coming out. And I want to thank everybody for starting to send recipes in to us. So again, shotgunredcompany@yahoo.com, and in the subject line put recipe to make sure it doesn't kick it over there to my spam. And Miss Sheila, thanks so much for helping me in the kitchen. Thanks for helping me get this stuff back and forth. She even carried that little pot in here before I could say anything. And there it is, catfish stew over rice. I hope you enjoy it. We'll see you next time right here on Cooking with Shotgun Red. Bye-bye.